Hello, it's Trell from Squad for Souls, and in this video I'm going to be talking about some paranormal experiences I have had throughout the course of living in a particular haunted house, and how those experiences have brought me to be a part of this investigation team today. Ghost stories were what we used to keep each other up at night, staring at bedroom ceilings, waiting for shadows to move against light filtering in from the window. As we grew older, paranormal investigation was a ticket to a cheap thrill amidst a town with little else to offer. Admittedly, I have to say the paranormal was little more than that. I guess you could say I was skeptical in the sense that I found it entertaining, but couldn't say I had experienced enough to say that spirits, spirit energy, or whatever it may be exists around us. In fact, I find it difficult to say many things are for certain when they lack a great deal of proof. However, I can't deny that many things I've experienced have been inexplicable and balancing too closely on the edge of what could be considered paranormal. I guess this also stems from an upbringing rooted in the belief that those who have passed on do indeed continue to live around us. But I digress. This video is about some of the strangest paranormal experiences I've had. Some of those are what pushed me to be in this investigation group and try to find more experiences like mine while potentially getting some answers. Built in 1979, this house really wasn't all that old, but the condition it was in after being abandoned for 2 years, and honestly, I expect the neglect during its construction had something to do with it, had aged the house to about 4 generations prior. Boasting 7 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, a full garage, and the privacy of a location within a wheat field, this house was made available at an extraordinarily cheap rent, with the promise of keeping a yard and interior that hadn't been touched in so long you about couldn't tell the difference between the two. I happily accepted the offer, looking back now and not understanding how I didn't see how this situation was so similar to the start of so many horror and suspense movies. The first night in that house, I knew something was off, constantly looking over my shoulder, like something was there. Nothing ever was, at least as far as my eyes could describe, but the feeling was there. And I suppose it's something that those people from paranormal shows are always trying to describe. So the best way I can illustrate it is like cold, heavy breath following me down the hallway, an uneasy ebbing and returning in periods of time like relaxed inhalations. Always a shadow. These currents of activity created noise, so much so that I had to go to bed with a fan blowing near my head just so I could sleep through my unseen roommates' late-night partying. In a reoccurring instance, I recall lying in the master bedroom, hearing who I'd come to expect as the former resident, pacing down the hallway, closer to the door, steps getting louder with each one as the floorboards creaked in rhythm. I looked up, often from my computer, assured that any second a face would appear, peeking around the corner with a frown. What was I doing in their home? Those footsteps, of course, never manifested their physical counterpart, only fading into the distance as if moving directly through the wall and out of earshot. Occasionally, they were preceded by the sudden rattle of a pet's kennel, with a loud clunk of a non-existent something. Then it was as if this person would storm down the hallway in frustration. I came to expect they were upset by the pet, as the animal, a guinea pig, would often make noise indicative only of when people were near. It was unreal and hardly the extent of what occurred. Objects would move before my eyes, plugs being pulled from outlets, doorknobs twisting and opening, bags flying off shelves, and stockings swaying above a Christmas fireplace following a loud and sudden crashing sound that left no evidence behind. Interactions with my wife and myself were undeniable and unwanted, like something someone would script in a cheesy horror film. My wife experienced blankets getting torn from her legs, loud frightening sounds increasing when home alone. She describes the experience as being frozen in place, convinced an intruder had found his way inside. And perhaps most disturbingly, she recalls the feeling of something touching against her thigh before falling asleep one night. Malevolent or not, I'm not sure I could say. As time passed in that house, the feelings did turn from fear and uncertainty to almost predictable and annoying. Patterns of activity were hardly the same, but we knew something was going to happen, especially if it had been a month or more of no activity. Now, what I'm about to describe is an occurrence that I struggled to find much supportive evidence for online. It was winter, mid-January. It hadn't snowed in a while, so the ground was covered with a sharp layer of ice. Not that soft, powdery stuff some people love. This house, among its many issues, did not retain heat well. To keep the house temperature at 65 degrees would cost me over $200 a month, something I certainly couldn't afford. So we kept a space heater in the bedroom, moving the TV there as well and spending most of our time bundled in blankets. My wife and I were sitting on the bed, watching something like Game of Thrones, when an episode ended and we left the room for a brief intermission before starting another. Upon our return, my wife tucked herself beneath a layer of the bed's blankets, where she had been previously. It wasn't a minute before she exclaimed, "The bed is wet." I replied with something to try and clarify what she meant. Quite literally, however, the bed was damp. This was not the case only 2 minutes ago. The top blanket, the comforter, the 2 sheets beneath that, the mattress protector, and even the mattress itself were moist to the touch. What's stranger is the wetness was retained to a specific rectangular shape on the bed. It did not reach the side where I was sitting, nor did it stretch out in any particular shape or patterns. It was a perfect rectangle. Naturally, I tried to explain the situation, ruling out possibilities that came to mind. It wasn't bodily fluid. There was no odor. The roof wasn't leaking or wet. No outside water source was near, such as water bottles or beverages. The dog couldn't have marked there, as he was with us and not allowed on the bed. Also, remember, it was odorless and colorless, and more fluid than a dog could create. The mattress and 5 layers of sheets and blankets on top were wet. It wasn't humid. This is northern Utah in January, and any humidity would freeze and fall as ice. We weren't sweaty either, as the bed wasn't wet minutes before, and we weren't sleeping for the night. I couldn't explain it. I still can't. I'm not sure what it was, because I've never heard of anything like this happening before. Was it paranormal? As far as I'm aware, I don't think science could explain it, so potentially, yes. Still, what was it? Was it some kind of residue manifesting itself? It's easy to let my imagination run wild, but the truth is, I just don't know. As is the case with every other bit of paranormal activity. Well, needless to say, that house was just different, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of detailing things that happened there. I haven't even mentioned many of my individual experiences, or some of the crazy things we thought we saw at times. Lights, people, figures. But I won't go into those details now. This is already running a bit long. I will say, however, these experiences forever altered my skepticism. They happened so many times that I cannot comfortably say they were coincidence or paranoia. Something is out there, listening, waiting, and possibly wanting us to reach out to them. The Squad for Souls paranormal investigation team hopes to provide comfort and humanization to some of the quick judgments people make about the paranormal. After all, what is paranormal but something science can yet describe? Maybe someday we will fully understand why footsteps creak down your hallway, how a voice on the radio can answer questions, and why we as humans have such an innate perception of the abstract. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is Squad for Souls.